Hey, welcome back to Diabolic Shrimp, the least professional talk show on the internet. I'm your host, best-selling author and comic creator Josh Grant, and we've got a special show with you today. A special guest, Blair Denholm. Before we get there, just a special announcement: our very first Shrimpy Awards is happening tomorrow, Saturday, May 1st. If you want to check it out, that's at 2 p.m. at Mountain Standard Time in the United States, and or just check it out as a rerun. We get to celebrate some authors that have submitted to the Shrimpy Awards. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's like the Oscars, but bigger. But before we get all the way there, we have our special guest today is Blair Denholm. Blair, he's just a great guy. He's just a lot of fun to talk to, but he also wrote all this great kind of action bits, and especially noir, and really captures that like kind of crime noir feeling, as well as nowadays interspersing a lot of these things with like sports, if you love sports. A bit about him before we bring him on. Blair Denholm is an Australian fiction writer who has lived and worked in New York, Moscow, Munich, Abu Dhabi, and Australia. Man, he has been all over the place. We'll ask him all about that. And Denholm's new series, The Fighting Detective, starring ex-boxer Jack Lisbon, is now up and flying with the first two installments. In fact, I believe there's about to be that third one I'm excited about. And Kill Shot and Shot Clock. The series features heavy doses of noir crime with a vigilante justice twist. Expect at least 6 novels with Detective Lisbon, his fellow cops, and a host of intriguing characters. Denholm's debut novel, Sold, which is another fantastic series, is the first in a noir trilogy featuring the detestable yet lovable one-man wrecking ball, Gary Braswell. The second book in the series, Sold to the Devil, was released in June 2020. The final episode, Sold Dirt Cheap, will see the light of day in 2022. I'm excited about that. I did not realize that was coming so soon, actually. So, well, in the next year or so. But finally, Denholm is working on a crime series set in Moscow. Captain Viktor Voloshin is a hard-boiled investigator who has to fight the establishment in order for justice to be served in his own special way. The first in this series, Revolution Day, will be published in October 2021. Blair currently resides in Hobart, Tasmania, with his partner Sandra and 2 canines, Max and Bruno. Well, Blair has this exciting life. Awesome novels. I just love like that crime noir. I've always wanted to write a detective novel myself, but I would just never feel like I can get that good. So maybe I can get some tips of the trade from the pro. But he's been waiting in the wings for a bit. Let's go ahead and bring Blair on. Blair, welcome to Diabolic Shrimp.
Hi, Josh. How are you?
I am doing great. How are you?
I feel very humbled after that crazy introduction. That makes me sound way more productive and energetic than I actually am.
You're just being humble. The typical Australian humility down there, you know.
Yeah, we're pretty laconic, laid back. You know, we just take things easy.
Yeah.
Someone on Facebook the other day said that, man, you're really prolific. And when I sit, in one of my writing sessions that I allot to myself, and I find I've been flicking through YouTube videos for the last 20 minutes instead of actually writing, I think, well, I've got them fooled.
Yeah, same here. I published a bunch of stuff, but it's like half the time, I'm just like watching things or whatever. But well, Blair, you deserve it. You're, like I said, your novels I've read. I've read your earlier series. I've read your later books, your latest one as well. Just a fantastic, just group of novels, and just I love, especially just like your main characters too, and just especially in a detective series, you kind of have to have a really just awesome kind of front runner. And I just love how you've written both your kind of main characters in both series, and like kind of where they're going as they kind of change over the course of the series. It's really cool. But before we get all there, let's just learn a bit about more about you. And so, did you bring us anything for show and tell?
I did. I'll bring this over very slowly, as you recommended. This says, I'll say it in Russian. It says "Moskva Atlas Turista," which is Moscow street directory.
I just love like that. I think Russian is actually a beautiful language. Like, some people disagree with me. They're like, oh, it's kind of a gross sounding language, but I love the sound of it. And I love how it's like, you literally just said like like something super boring like street directory, but it's like the most beautiful sounding thing ever. And you have a great like just like a accent for it. And so,
well, I think I actually mispronounced a little bit there in my haste, but it literally says Atlas of the Tourist. So,
nice.
but I call it a street directory because that's actually what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very important to me. I'll just show you again. It's a good old-fashioned pre-Google Maps thing that people had to rely on to get around. Now, I bought that, I think it was in 1990, and just prior to the collapse of the Soviet Union. And
Nice.
I'm so glad I did, because at the time I hadn't written anything. But I decided to write a story based on an incident that was rumored to have happened when I was a student there in the late 80s. Apparently, a black student was lynched in a forest
Oh, wow.
near where our dormitory was. This was rumor, and so there was no internet. So imagine if there had been, it would have been crazy. So we don't know whether it actually happened. We don't know whether anyone was punished or arrested, but people I know well insist that this really did happen. So I thought, well, it's good basis for a story. So and I wanted to lend authenticity to this story. I've made up names as well as to protect the innocent.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to get the street names right. And if you go online now and you look up, they've all been changed, because after 1991, after the coup and the overthrow of the Communist Party, there was a relentless program of renaming thousands of places, street names, buildings, you name it. So
even just like a lot of things have like been rebuilt too, and from that time. I just know from my own, I mean, not as much in Russia, but like I mean, Moscow has grown a lot, but it's like but like my family's like from like Germany, and we had East-West Germany, and it's like and when the wall collapsed and the Soviet Union collapsed subsequently after that, but it's like pretty much all of East Germany has been like entirely rebuilt. You won't recognize a lot of it.
Yeah, I had the fortune when I was working in Germany in 2008-9 to travel to East Germany and see a border post museum. It was quite incredible. It was, most tourists get to see Berlin who go to Germany, and you can see Checkpoint Charlie, all that kind of infrastructure. But you head out further to the actual, because Berlin was an enclave within West Germany, a very strange geographic situation. But I got to travel out to where the old border was, and there were turrets and there were trenches dug, and it was quite horrific.
It was
actually, on that same note, when I was studying in Moscow, I met a German guy from East Germany. I met lots of German people there. His name was Mannheim. I even remember his name. I met him once, and he said that wall will never come down. And this was in 1987. I think it came down the next year. And I always remember
it's 89. It was 89, but yeah, it was like right after. Yeah, but it's right after that though.
Yeah. So, and I always think back to that guy, because he wanted it to come down. He wanted to.
All the Germans did, really. It's like,
but even 2 years prior, he was filled with this pessimism that this could never happen. And
I was feeling a lot of that, like these days, right? It's like we have North South Korea, and it was just kind of like that same kind of view. It's like oh, I don't know if they'll ever reunify, but I was like, that was the same view in East West Germany, so you never know. But and that was kind of that thing. It's like no one ever thought the Soviet Union would collapse, and so
the guy running North Korea, I think, is a bit more of a loony than anybody that we've ever seen anywhere at any time.
Truth be told on that one. So, all right. So, so you've had being over there, it's like, it's interesting, and I'm especially going to blend into your books, and we'll talk about Shot Clock. Oh, by the way, if everyone's watching, do check out Blair's books down below there if you want to check him out while you're watching this. Like I have his books down in the description below, as well as his website. Do check that out. Throw any questions to him in the live chat if you feel like it. But like, we'll definitely talk about kind of like, how your experience there and traveling has kind of worked their way into your books. But do tell me, so you were accepted to like study at university back in the Soviet Union, right?
Yeah, it was kind of a self-funded private initiative. Another person who I studied with at uni back then also went with me from Queensland University. We're still good friends. So yeah, we applied, and then I waited months and months and received, believe it or not, a telex. Do you remember them?
Yes.
So it was a telex in Russian, but it was written using the Latin script, because the telex machine wasn't capable of reproducing Cyrillica. So it was a bit of a deciphering.
So now you know Latin too. Maybe that was like the first test, since you eventually went on to like translate like Russian, right? It's like,
well, it was almost like reading Polish, because Polish uses the Latin script, whereas Russian and Bulgarian and a few other languages, Serbian as well, they use the Cyrillic script, which frightens the hell out of a lot of people when they see it.
Yes,
it's actually very simple to master. You take you a couple of days to learn.
Well, you're talking to me. It might take me a few weeks.
No. Just the sounds of the letters. That's all I'm talking about.
I know. I'm the one that kind of I used to fail speech for for English, and I am I speak English, and so it's like I used to be like RE. I add E on the end of everything. So I guess I'll have I'll have Cyrillic with an extra E on the end.
That's no problem.
Dobre utra E.
Right, you've knocked me off course there, Josh.
I'm sorry. So you were all right. So you got this. I mean, what possessed you? What possessed you actually to reach out and go that direction? Like say, hey, I want to go to the Soviet Union and study.
Yeah, it started off. Well, I went to university. I was totally surprised even to be accepted into university in the first place. I was preparing to look for work, and I just managed to sneak in. I got the right amount of grades, as you'd call it in the US. I was lucky. It was a very brief period in Australian history where university education was completely free. So more or less free. You had to buy your textbooks and all that sort of stuff.
And textbooks are like $500. So there you go. Right. They got their money. No.
So I snuck in under the radar. So that was one. So I got into university, and I wanted to study English and journalism. I wanted to be a journalist.
Nice.
And I had studied German at high school, and I quite enjoyed that. So I thought I'll learn Russian language just for a bit of fun. So I did that a couple of hours a week, doing English and journalism as well. And I started really enjoying the Russian language. More than anything else. And I think at the end of the first year, when all the grades came in, I did much better in Russian than anything else. And the professor of the department, he invited me to do an honors degree with the Russian department, whereas the English department was massive, and you're just a small fish, and it's easy to be overlooked. The Russian department was small, cozy, and so of course I accepted. So I sort of did double major in Russian language, but it still wasn't enough. You're a long way away. You're learning the language in classes, and we heard about this Pushkin Institute in Moscow that was, that accepted foreign students, still under the Soviet Union. So it was a little bit scary.
Yeah. I just think it's incredible that you were accepted, especially for the time, of course, because it's there was of course, you're I'm in the United States, so it's the United States was just a bit different at the time because it was a little bit more that was a little bit more contentious, but versus you were kind of part of more like Australia, right? And so
I'll just let you know there were plenty of Americans there.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I find that fascinating actually for kind of the tensions of the time.
I became friends with a fellow called John, we shared a room, and we're still friends. 30
Nice.
plus years later, he became a professor of linguistics. I think he's at Boston University now. It was a real hooligan back in the day, but he mended his ways. So I got myself on a plane and went to Finland first, and then took a train to Moscow. And when I arrived there all by myself, I got out of the train. I thought, I got no idea where I got to go. I approached this taxi driver, and then I started to try and explain what I wanted. And I realized, man, learning a language in a language laboratory with headphones on and being able to stop and say everything really slowly, that's not the real world, man.
Yeah, it's like, where is the restroom? Show me to the library.
He looked at me like I was a Martian, and then he started speaking. I thought, why is he speaking Italian to me? It sounded so weird. Anyway, finally, we worked out what was happening, and I gave him a piece of paper with the address of the institute, and he took me there and knocked on the door. And they said, "No, we're not expecting you." I said, "What?"
That's a heart attack. It's like, I'm here.
Anyway, they checked their records, and yes, it was just a little mistake. So I spent 12 months there, and then I got a job with a publishing company translating Russian literature into English for a couple of months. And then one day I'm riding the train, and I just felt overwhelmingly under, I don't know what the word is. I just felt like this place is too depressing for me. I have to leave. So I came back home.
Oppressive, maybe, I guess.
It was like everyone looked really miserable. And,
that's I connect with you on that. It's like my family. My family, is in West Germany, but they went on over to East Germany at the time, and they just talked about how just interesting in that sense it was, whereas everything was just gray, and people were just very people wouldn't talk to you as a Westerner, and it was, East Germany was weirdly even more strict than even the rest of the Soviet Union. So it's there was even more kind of that oppressive feel. But I just find that fascinating. I just find I give you kudos. I just think it's so it's just so brave to just move anywhere, anytime you have to move in life. And I every time I've ever had to move, it's I kind of threw my heart into it, and it always got better and better. But it's just I just think that's just amazing that you just stepped out on a limb and said, hey, I'm going to go and do this and pursue this. And I just think that that is just so great. And I connect with you also with a bit of that culture shock. I went back to Germany just to see where my family lived, because I never actually lived there when I was little. I was born right after that. But I went back there, and I studied German in high school, and I was so excited to practice my German. And I got there in Germany, and again, hearing people talk, it's how am I going to do this? I learned where do you come from? What do you like to eat? And, but I get up there to the first bratwurst vendor I see, and I'm like, ich wünsche mir ein Bratwurst bitte. And I'm all excited. And the man's American. He's like, you want ketchup with that? I'm like, oh yeah. Okay, sure. I'll take some ketchup. Thanks. So it's a bit of a culture shock. Did you have any other culture shock moments while you were there?
Well, I think I slipped into it pretty quickly. I was only young, very early 20s, and it was just a big party, really. A lot of booze was put away by the students.
It is Russia, it's all the vodka.
we soon learned that. I guess the culture shock is the militarism of it all. Everywhere you look, men in uniform, be they soldiers, or even KGB had their own uniform, and it was on their epaulette. You knew they was KGB. They weren't hiding. I mean, they had secret agents as well, but or did it just say GB? I think it just said GB.
Yeah, I forgot what their their one was, but they would usually be kind of out in the corner or whatever, and or whatever.
Of course, there was a lot of deficits. There's a very common Russian word then, deficit. There's nothing in the stores. The inability to travel freely, but we did sneak around a little bit. I'd take trains to St. Petersburg, which was Leningrad back then, technically breaking visa conditions. and that was very scary. Like I would take the train to go and visit people. But other than that, you soon slip into the way of life, and you enjoy the simplicity of things as well.
Yeah.
So, but you're talking about the overpressure, the sense of depression and all that sort of thing. But when you get to know the people on a personal level, it's completely different. It's just when they're out in the street, they're sort of slumped over, kind of not looking happy, or in the train, not meeting your eye, no one's smiling. But when you get to know the people and you meet them and you go to their families or what have you, visit them in their apartments, completely different.
Yeah. And that was kind of Germany back then too. From what I hear, I wasn't. I was like little for all this stuff, so I didn't really don't really get to.
Certainly not humorless people. Yeah, like Russian jokes are some of the best.
Yes, I've heard a few.
Yeah,
but not all of them can end up on the channel, I don't think. Though.
No, I won't tell you any on air.
All right, well, give us. All right, so I'm gonna. I really want to dive a little bit more into your travel experience, because I think it kind of speaks into a little bit of your writing too, because your writing has this depth and this knowledge, and it's just cool. It's that noir. I mean, you said it in your descriptions of your own books, but like noir is a great description of it, and that's what I love about it. It's just got depth and character, and but you capture whatever feel you're going for, and I kind of feel like some of your experience kind of fed into that. But before we get there, like, can you teach us one Russian phrase? Because I know you translate Russian for a living, so give us a phrase in Russian, and that our audience can learn to their heart.
Something simple.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Как вас зовут? How about that?
What was it?
Как
вас
зовут? What is your name?
Okay. Как вас зовут?
And then you say меня зовут Josh.
Меня зовут Joshua.
Классно.
Спасибо.
There we go. A simple exchange.
Excellent. Well, I was like, that's great. I can add it to my my repertoire. Like I said, like I can basically say I could basically say "Ya vas lublю," which is like I love you. I love you guys, I guess. And I can say "Dobre utro." It's like good morning.
Yeah.
Well, now I can say "Как вас зовут?"
Меня зовут Blair.
Yeah. I don't remember to say. I'll just say great. Hey, thanks for teaching me, Blair. All right, so so you've traveled to like different places though throughout your life, and you've been kind of across the planet in a sense, and getting to kind of sample a lot of different cultures just through. I know through a lot of it was like through your work and stuff, but like what kind of prompted all your travels, and what did you really enjoy about it, or did you really enjoy it?
Well, the first time I ever left Australia was believe it or not, was on a Russian cruise ship. There was a cruise. they had a bunch of cruise ships. So this company it was a Soviet government company.
Sounds like a fun cruise. It
actually was. Actually was.
Yeah.
And that was back in 1985. So I even had a birthday on this ship. It was great fun.
That's awesome.
It was called CTC Lines. One of the boats sunk in New Zealand.
Hopefully not the one, not for your birthday,
not the one I was on. I can't remember whether anyone died on it or not, but I think they've scuttled the whole fleet now. But back in the day, they were cheap, affordable trips. So my university organized. It was 15 nights, and it cost me virtually nothing. And we went all around the Pacific. We went to Tonga, Fiji.
It was the Soviet Union, so basically cost nothing. It's
Vanuatu. So we did all those Pacific islands, and it was a rusty old boat, but it was great fun. I really enjoyed it. And one of the things I'll never forget, we got to know one of the crew, and one morning he didn't show up. And I think he was a waiter or something. And we asked one of his colleagues, I said, where's Vladimir? What happened? He said, he got a call last night. His wife have baby. I sound like Borat now. But this morning he have terrible overhang.
that's fun.
Yeah.
So all right, so of all the places you kind of like you ended up staying in, because I know you ended up like living, right? It's like you were like New York and Munich and Abu Dhabi and all that. It's like in Australia. It's like of all those places, like in Soviet Union, it's like well, where did you just like absolutely love like living? I mean, you might have loved all of it, right? But it's like what was one that
Yeah.
you just absolutely really enjoyed your time in?
I enjoyed living in a town called Al Ain, which
Uh-huh.
is in the middle. Have you heard of it?
No.
No, it's right in the middle of the desert in the United Arab Emirates. So it's the third city of the UAE. You have
Uh-huh.
Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and then you have Al Ain, which I think at one point was the capital before oil was discovered and it
Uh-huh.
became a booming economy. But it's there's a lot of oases there. So I was working with this Swiss company, and we were living out of the Hilton Hotel in Al Ain, and not that I'd say it's a great country to live in, but I really enjoyed the experience of living at close quarters with these colleagues who became very good friends.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's a fascinating country. That whole Middle East area is very fascinating.
Yeah, well, and just shifting so much too. The United Arab Emirates just in the past like 20 years have had kind of a lot of shifts in a way of like just where they want to go and like building up their cities and things like that. And
yeah, like they're pretty scary, these places. Dubai, like it's just massive. Have you been there?
I have not. One of these days, I just want to go just to see it and see how.
Yeah, it's good for a holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah, but living as an expat, in pretty comfortable conditions is totally different from living there as a native.
True.
Abu Dhabian or whatever, Emirati, I suppose. Yeah, that was interesting. I loved living in New York. That was for about 3 months. We had the company rented us an apartment, West 42nd Street, right next to the Hudson River.
Nice.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah, I really enjoyed New York.
And I've never been there either. I live in the United States.
Really?
But I want to go. That's something I want to do. I travel bits of the world, but I was like, I want to actually travel like United States at some point, because I've never really been to either coast. I just kind of live sort of in the middle and just check things out in the middle. So I spend a lot of time in the wilderness is what I spend. One of these days I want to actually check out all the great cities of the world, I guess.
Yeah, there's plenty of them. Yeah, New York's fascinating. I've also been to San Francisco. I spent 6 weeks living with this friend I made in Moscow when he was studying at Berkeley. So that was pretty amazing. So I've seen the extremes of the United States, like either end, but nothing in the middle.
Well, it's lots of plains and lots of mountains. So, like I said, the wilderness.
Well, that's right. Like I recall flying from San Francisco to New York. No, from LA to New York, and it was in the day. It was during the day, and you had a good view out the window.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm thinking, there's supposed to be 260 million people living in the United States. Where are they? I don't believe it. I think
you sound like me. Like anytime I'm just driving through like a couple of the states in the here out west, it's like it's like, where's the town? I always hear people that live in this town, but it's like I think they live in the trees or underground, maybe.
What it was like looking at the window of the airplane the whole way. There was nothing until you got to New York.
we inflate it actually in the United States. Like everyone actually just lives in New York and San Francisco, and we just pretend people live other places. There's cardboard houses everywhere. So like, all right. So like for your traveling, like and then we'll dive all into your books, because I really do want to highlight your books. I love your book series. I love all the crime noir and like how has kind of your world travels influenced your writing, or how do you think, if you never thought about it, I guess?
Well, it certainly opens you up to different cultures. I think just or you can do that now from the comfort of your lounge room these days anyway. You can get on YouTube and you can watch travel videos to your heart's content, without actually setting foot out the door. Maybe that's what everyone's going to have to do soon anyway,
that's right.
Travel restrictions. I'm kind of glad that I've got it out of my system and done it all. Who knows what lies ahead,
Yeah, and you did it in such a nice peaceful time of back in the Soviet Union.
Well, yeah, my mother
kind
was
of peaceful.
terrified. My mother thought I'd never come home, but yeah, I think travel is there's something on my fridge about travel. It's like one of these little magnets. It's the only thing you spend money on that doesn't make you poorer, something like that. I mean,
actually, that is a really deep.
That I've totally got that wrong, but that's the gist of it. But yeah, the experience you get, you meet people. Some of my best friends live overseas. Just from meeting them on travels, like in Portugal, for example. You notice the name of my detective is Jack Lisbon. I've plucked that straight out of the capital of Portugal because I love the country so much.
I never made that connection, actually, and now that's interesting.
Yeah, and I double checked. Is that really a name? Yeah, it is a name. Because you get London, people with names like that. They're just names of Berlin is a surname. So I thought maybe Lisbon is as well, and it was. So yeah, that's one of my favorite countries of all time. I highly recommend you visit Portugal.
Yeah, I was like, I heard it's beautiful. I was like, maybe I'll name some of my books like San Francisco. Just but no, Jack Lisbon. That's one of the things I just thought was great too about it. It's like all the names just like flow and they're real, and it's just like it really connects. Because I as a writer just like struggle with names. I was talking to someone recently, and they talked about how they like got to name name someone's kiddo, right? And I was like, good for you, because I was like, I can never come up with a name on the spot. I would name their kid like Lorple or something like that. I don't know. It's like
you would go the traditional book, like,
I'm just saying, if I had to name somebody on the spot, because when I'm trying to write and I'm like trying to come up with a name, I'm like, I don't know what to name them right now. I'm just gonna name them Grob, and I'll change it later.
Yeah, come back.
And I forget about it, and it's like in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think when I read fantasy, which isn't that often, I think the names they use, like, to me, they're not relatable. Like they just sound like random syllables.
I always feel like if you have two apostrophes in it, then you got to go back and just work on it a bit when it's like this long. And some people have like multiple like rock dog knock, and I'm like, I can't read this entire book.
Yeah, why don't they just call these guys John and Mary?
Yeah. And so all right, so that's cool. So some of your travel like really like fed into like, it's like some of the names. I can definitely tell from like just hearing some of your story about like I can just see a little bit of like that character coming out through you. It's like into your books. And also just you kind of going back to the start of this, you talked about the rumor and potentially truth of the black student being killed in the Soviet Union. And at the time, like you said, it's like I grew up without internet when I was younger and everything. It's like, you can't just go and Google something or whatever back then. So it's like, you actually had to look into it if you wanted to. And so did some of that like maybe spark your interest in this like crime noir?
I definitely did. I mean, I came back from Russia a long time ago, and I actually had an old Macintosh, what was it, SE or something like that? I don't know if you remember these.
Yeah.
This big boxy thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, like the kind of big block.
And I typed maybe a page of this book way back then and just left it. So I've always wanted to write that story. And it was only maybe 2016 I revisited it and had another go. And then last year I said, no, I've got to finish this. And I finished it. And as it happens, I was Googling something. I can't remember what it was. And lo and behold, in 1963, a student from an African country, I can't remember which one it is. In my book, it's Nigeria. I think it was Ghana. In reality, in 1963, did die in mysterious circumstances.
That's unfortunate.
And there were protests on Red Square. Like black students went out carrying placards saying Moscow is Europe's Alabama, sort of thing. It was
good on them for going out there, because that was a very dangerous thing to do in the
very
Soviet
brave
Union.
thing to do. but nothing was ever proven against anyone. The weird thing was the guy he died in a city he wasn't registered in, so the Russians were very tight about controlling where you are. So you have a visa for Moscow, or you have a visa for this city or that city. He was not in that city he was supposed to be in, and it was called death by misadventure. There's an actual scholarly article about this case written, which I read. Can't remember the name of the woman who wrote it. She's an American woman, and it just was amazing to read this, because I'm writing this story that I think is all in my head, and something similar had actually happened 24 years before my 30-year-old story, so it's going way, way back now.
Well, that's just incredible. It's kind of like the, it's like the, that old question, like the art, emulating reality and reality emulating art, and it's just kind of interesting. Well, here, let's dive on into the Jack Lisbon series and all your books, and we'll talk Shot Clock. Here's the first lines from Shot Clock, which is Shot Clock was the second in your Jack Lisbon series. And I always add and then the murders began after, the first few lines, just for my own fun, always, whenever I read them, but it might actually work with yours. So let's check it out. His nerves jangled so hard he could barely steer the stolen car in a straight line. He tuned into a classical music radio station, Vivaldi's Four Seasons. And then the murders began. Well, there are some murders in Shot Clock, or murder. And so tell us a bit about Shot Clock, and then I'll ask you around that. But just tell us a bit about the whole Jack Lisbon series.
Okay. Well, Jack Lisbon, he started off as a detective in the London Metropolitan Police, which is abbreviated to the Met. And he was a very dodgy character, heavy drinker, bent the rules to get things done. He had a Jamaican wife and a daughter, Sky, who was about 3. Mm-hmm. And their relationship was always unsteady, let's call it that. And Jack was a boxer when he was a youth, and he likes to train, and he likes to use his fists to resolve problems. So he got into a bit of bother with a gym trainer. This is in a book called Fighting Dirty. Mm-hmm. This is a novella which introduces Jack, and then the full-length novels come after that. I won't say too much about it, but let's just say Jack got into a lot of trouble.
Don't spoil it, because it's just
no spoilers. I was almost going to get
his character grow.
I was about to retell the whole story. Anyway, he gets into a lot of trouble, and he is asked politely to leave, and he's advised that maybe he could emigrate somewhere. So he emigrates to Australia and somehow manages to get himself a job as a policeman in Australia, even after the horrible things he's done. So he bases himself initially in Brisbane, works as a uniform cop for 5 years, passes the detective exam, and then he moves to far north Queensland. And this is a geographical area that's not been exploited before much, I don't think, for fiction. So usually Australian fiction is set in Sydney or Melbourne, or
and kind of like the bigger ones. That's what I thought was interesting about it. Was just for myself, just learning a lot more about the other side of the world. You're pretty much on the farthest side of the world from me. And so so it was just fascinating to me, and also like you say, kind of learning more about a little bit more of that kind of an area, like you said, that hasn't really been touched on. I also love, I just want to highlight though, just your main characters always and just your characters in general. You really put so much depth into them. And that's what I love about them. They're not these high on a pillar people, or just like randomly evil or whatever. It's they have depth to them, and they have a history, and they have hard things they went through, and they didn't always make the right choice. And that's what I think is just just makes them so compelling.
Thanks, Josh. I agree that a compelling character has to have something to overcome, whether it's an external force or something inside them. And I did that with my first series as well, with Gary Braswell, the detestable human wrecking ball. We might talk about him a bit later. But with Jack, I tried to make the stories equally plot and character driven. So some writers focus on character, like that's probably a tool maybe romance writers would use, because there's not a lot happening apart from human interaction. It's not like heavy on plot, but I'm getting better at it actually, at devising twisted plots as I go. Like when I start out writing some of these books, I think, oh, this is a bit linear, like it's still going in a straight line. But then these characters appear and they take on the life of their own. Like with Jack Lisbon, his partner Claudia, she's kind of a bit player at this point, but I can see her branching out, maybe even having her own series. I don't know.
Nice.
As well as the chief forensics officer, this Margaret Proctor. I really like her as well. I mean, I was only going to give her a couple of lines, but then she just took over. And I really like her. She's very eccentric.
Yeah, I like her too. Actually, I was like, those are the kind of characters I love, that like just kind of dive in. And like I have one in one of my fantasy books or whatever, that I was like, this is a side guy that was just like supposed to help move the plot along, and I just kind of fell in love with the character. And that's why I love those kind of characters that like you just love them so much, you just have to kind of like keep them in there. And and it just see how it grows. I'm curious from you, especially writing noir. And just like a detective series or crime noir, you were mentioning kind of like like plot and kind of a character focus and kind of finding balance sometimes, or like which comes, but which for you, like kind of comes first? Like, did you kind of go with like the plot first and then the characters kind of filled in, or was it more like, I have this character like Jack, and I just really want to see where he can go. So you start with the character.
I think I start with the character.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I really enjoy writing dialogue.
Mm-hmm. I can tell. It's great. Yeah. I mean that in a good way. I love the just like I said, I love your characters, and so it's like that interaction and that dialogue is just super natural.
Yeah, it's almost like maybe one day I could write a play, but I've got no idea about stagecraft or anything like that. But because then you can just hone in on the dialogue. I enjoy writing dialogue, and sort of imbuing, little character traits that you'd know straight away who's speaking. Because when I started writing, I'd reread it and go, well, I'm not really sure who's speaking here. There's all sounding kind of the same, and that's something you learn as you write more. You probably found that yourself.
Oh yes, again, I'm connecting with you on everything. I was like, I did the same thing. I went back in my early writing, and I was just like, this is just a jarble of just random lines, and I'm like, and I have the problem in my own writing of just like, all the characters start to blend together. They become the same person over time. And I have to go back and like shift it where it's like they sound more like themselves, kind of natural, like kind of what you were saying.
Yeah. I really enjoy getting into a character's head. The not just Jack, but the bad guy as well. I really enjoyed Shot Clock. The bad guy, I can't even say that.
Yeah, you can't say it. I know that's the hard thing, and I want you to, because I did absolutely like. I was trying to think of a way to like.
You know what I was going to say.
Mm-hmm, yes, and so I was like, and that's part of the fun of it. It's like, and well, that's all the fun. Like, that's what I love about like, detective and stories and mysteries and noir. And that's part of the huge fun of that. That's what I was having fun with in my comic, The Lost Boys, since it's kind of like a kind of in a way like detective kind of thing too. But like, it's really fun to have like your main characters and like the depth of like what's going on with them, but it's also like the equally as much fun to like have your villain and have interesting villains, because I always go back to that like kind of Batman thing. Like, Batman is cool, but what everyone walks away with is who was the villain. And so James Bond too. James Bond is cool, but what's the villain like, and that's part of the fun of it. And that's what, like, I don't want to say anything about any of your villains because they're great.
No,
so it's like, I don't want to like, tip anybody off here. So, how do you, oh, sorry, go on.
No, you ask.
Okay. Like, how do you like build a great mystery? Because you have these great mysteries. I mean, it's like more in that like crime noir, but it is like mystery. And so like, how do you build this like compelling mystery then?
Well, the reason it's a mystery is because it's a mystery to me as well. Yeah. There's a guy, oh God, I wish I could remember his name, but he wrote a book called Writing into the Dark. I think his last name, Dean Wesley Smith. Have you heard of him?
No, I have not actually.
He's written.
Actually, no, I think I have heard, but these days I think I recognize every author I've met enough.
He's written a ton of books, a lot of westerns and so on, but he's a bit of a guru for other writers. He says, you sit down to write with no idea of how it's going to end. That's what I do. A lot of writers like to write the ending first and then work backwards, but he expresses it this way. He says, if I don't know how it's going to end, then the reader's going to have no idea how it's going to end. So it's going to be even more of a mystery for them. Whereas if I sit down and it's already clear in my mind, X, Y, or Z is the killer and it's going to happen like this, then in the process of writing, he's not enjoying that. So he's writing almost as a reader would, approach every scene from scratch. Having said that, sometimes I do skip a little bit ahead. It's like playing a game of chess. You can't get right to the end, but you might see 2 or 3 moves ahead based on what you've already written. I'll make a little note. I'll say, I'll have to explain why he had to look inside the car and why he found that wallet. What did he do later? So I have to go to 2 more chapters and explain that, because you don't want to explain it right away, because then what's the point?
I feel you like in I'm typically one of those people who's like I typically have a clear vision of the end and I work my way back, and I usually have a twist I'm trying to build into it, so I have to like build along the way. And I like how you said it's kind of strategic like chess, because it kind of is. But I do have to say my favorite twist I ever wrote into one of my books was the one that I didn't see coming. Like my very first book, Pandora, I have multiple twists in that book. But like Pandora, it's a horror book, but it's like it is kind of a mystery, but I was like, I had this twist I had in mind that I loved, and I was working towards that. And then the very end of the book, I just didn't feel like it had like enough of an ending for this book, and so and then suddenly I had this like epiphany, and it's like, what a great twist! It was something I didn't think was coming, and I love it so much because it's like it takes a character that you wouldn't expect was some way or another, and like it makes them into something else. And it's like, I don't want to spoil, but it's like that to me is what I love. So I kind of feel with what you're saying, like writing, like that kind of idea of writing into the dark, and it's like, and building kind of like a story that you won't know where it's coming. Because if you're kind of delighted about it as an author, then of course your audience will be, and your characters won't see it coming. And that's what I think is really cool. So wait, so like you back in the day, you had typed out on back when we all had our old blocky computers, right? And it's like when they were in the earlier days, it's like, so you had typed out this like page of your series, and like how much has your story changed since that original bit?
It's nothing like it. Yeah, completely different. When I started writing it, I wasn't even going to have a cop in it. It was just going to be, I don't know what it was going to be. It was just some rambling nonsense.
That's what people call my books. So it works out. You can still become a bestseller with rambling nonsense.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, like James Joyce's Ulysses or something. Like, it just made no sense.
Yeah.
Not that I'd compare it with that, but I think having written other stuff and then coming back to it, like having a book published, like my first book was published through a traditional publisher, but then subsequently I decided to go my own way. I had a lot of help from professional editors on that first book, and that's really helped a lot. I'm not using editors much now,
Mm-hmm.
but I really took a lot of stock of what they told me about pacing and, overwriting. Like, that was my problem, just writing too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I've pared back my Jack Lisbon books to, they're about 65,000 words now. Your classic traditional novel is about 80 plus. So I think I can tell my story more quickly now. Yeah.
Well, I think I had written that in maybe one of my reviews too. Is like your writing is crisp, and that's what I kind of mean by that. It's like you don't overdo it. It's like it's crisp, and it still has the feel, and that's something you want as a writer. That's you have that nice balance. Well, let's show off your writing, since we're running a little bit low on time, and I want to make sure that we get a chance to show off your writing. So we have some pages here from Shot Clock, and we're going to get to dramatically read. So you get to be the narrator. I get to be let's see, or you, yeah. So you're the narrator. Oh, and you're Jack Lisbon as well.
I'll be Jack.
Sounds great. Okay, you can pull off the Cockney accent way better than I can. It's like my Cockney accent was a little bit slurred this evening. I was sounding Russian for some reason a little bit, which is great. You can correct me on my Russian as well. I have a bad Russian accent.
No, so I haven't got my reading glasses on, so I'm reading this from the printed page. So hopefully I won't get anything wrong.
No problem. I'm sitting here. Yeah, it looks light in here, but it's actually super dark when you're actually filming it. It's kind of fun. So it's like, so I'll be over here squinting just a bit too. So all right, well, we only have a couple minutes, so hopefully we'll get a chance.
All right, let's go.
We'll read as much. Can you quickly like set the stage for our audience? Like, what is happening in this scene?
Okay. The head coach of the town of Yorkville's basketball team has been killed in a hit and run accident. Supposed accident. There is some suspicious figures at the scene of the crime, all very tall. So naturally the cops think, well, the basketball coach has been killed. Somebody saw some tall people. Let's go talk to the basketball players. So that makes a lot of sense, right?
Yes.
That's where you'd start.
Well, sounds good. All right. Well, let's
gone to a training session the day after the coach has been killed.
Excellent. Okay.
We've got the stand-in coach there. So
excellent. Well, let's dive on in whenever you're ready.
Okay. Let's go. Basketballs thudded into the polished wooden boards of the court, caromed off the perspex backboard, and slapped into sweaty palms. Men the size of trees, in shorts so baggy they could double as parachutes, ran in synchronized patterns. The fill-in coach shouted instructions and gave short, sharp toots on a whistle. The players' footsteps boomed. To Jack, it looked like an excitable gang of overgrown border collies reacting to a shepherd's commands. He guessed the average height of the men on the court to be about 6'7". A couple were close to 7 feet. There was a shorty amongst them, an excitable bloke with a ginger crew cut and trim beard, about 6 foot neat. Most of them would have weighed in at over 100 kilograms. Reflective of Australia's demographic makeup and sprinkled with US import players, there was an almost even mix of black and white, a variety of hairstyles and tattoos. All were muscled in a lean way, like finely honed boxers in the lower to middleweight divisions, minus the ugly facial damage. He took a seat 3 rows back in the stand, waiting for a chance to chat with the emergency coach and the players. DC Taylor flipped the lid of the stowaway seat next to Jack and handed him a styrofoam cup.
Any joy from this lot?
I thought I'd wait for them to finish up. It's not polite to interrupt people when they're training. Personally, I'm liable to throw punches if my routine's disturbed.
You're disturbed. Sorry, I gave her a deep voice earlier.
She joked as she took a seat. Jack grunted. Taylor gestured to a lanky black man gliding down the court at half pace. He stopped almost to a walk before laying the ball gently off the backboard and into the net.
That's Leroy Costa. I'm no expert, but does that look like a half-hearted effort to you?
Yeah, the death of the coach must have hit him hard. The star in particular, or he's taken it because he organized the man's death. A whistle blast pierced the air. The shrill shriek bounced off the hard surfaces in the near-empty auditorium. Players reached for towels, energy drinks, and sports bags. Some slumped on the subs bench, rested forearms on knees, sucked in air. Others shuffled off the playing area chatting, shaking soreness out of their bodies as they went. They walked loosely like rappers with dislocated joints. No one was smiling and no one was laughing.
"What's your plan?"
said Taylor. "We're going to follow them into the change rooms and question each and every one of them. Something stinks about this tragedy, and I don't mean the player's body odor."
"I'll wait out here if you don't mind."
"Why?"
"Come on, Jack. They're going to be showering, wandering about without any clothes on."
Hadn't thought of that. You'd probably have a heart attack if you saw them in their birthday suits." A wicked grin crossed Taylor's face. Dimples formed in her cheeks.
"Is that what you reckon?"
He felt the blood rushing to his face. "No,
"Settle down, D.S. Lisbon. It's not them that would make me feel uncomfortable. It'd be the other way around. A female cop questioning them when they're at their most, how can I put it, exposed and vulnerable, wouldn't get the best results."
Doesn't seem fair, you sitting on your ass while I do all the graft."
"Piss off, Jack. What do you think I'm here for, your sparkling repartee?"
"Oi, uncalled for."
"I got in touch with Phil Collins this morning, mainly to apologize again for your despicable behavior."
"What? I was only trying to establish..." She held up a hand.
"Let me finish. Let me finish." That's you.
Keep reading.
Oh, sorry. Let me finish. She readily admitted that she stands to make a tidy sum out of Dale's life insurance policy. Sorry.
"How much?"
"Over $1 million. Plus, of course, she inherits the house and a shitload of other stuff."
"Let's haul her down the station for a grilling. If she's behind her husband's death, an hour of Miss Collins in the hot seat might get us a confession."
"I wouldn't get too excited if I were you."
Taylor sipped coffee, smacked her lips. "Why not?"
"I know you were suspicious of their wealth, so I got Constable Wilson to make some inquiries. He didn't have to try too hard. A simple internet search revealed Dale's family in Utah's not only pious, but rich."
"How rich?"
"Filthy. Old money. The Collins clan has been investing in American property for generations. Got their own Wikipedia page. In short, Jack, they're loaded."
She tossed her empty coffee cup across the 2 rows in front and over a railing. It bounced on the edge of a rubbish bin, lobbed for a second, then disappeared.
And then the murders began. Sorry, we're running a little low on time. I wish we can go dive in more because it's such a fantastic novel. I really hope that that people check it out. That if you haven't had a chance to read, if you're watching this, check out down below. Those links are in the description. We have all your books. We have your website, Blair. But Blair, how else can we? Before I send you off here, how else can we support you?
Just buy the books, leave reviews, visit my website, write me letters. That's about it.
Sounds good. You can write to him and say Dobre Utra.
You can say whatever you like.
Well, Blair, it's been such a joy having you. I wish we had a bit more time to dive back in because there we go. And so, well, Blair, sorry about that. This is why we're the least professional talk show on the internet. Hey, it's been such a blast having you. Thank you so much for being on Shrimp.
I enjoyed it so much. Thank you. Talk again.
All right.
Bye.
Well, that was Blair Denholm. Again, all of his stuff is down in the description. I really hope you get a chance to check out his work. I've really enjoyed it. I'm excited that there's another one coming up here, and also in October, his new one also going into kind of a bit of connecting back actually a little bit to some of that Soviet Union, Russia kind of thing. And so I'm kind of excited to check that out as well. Hey, if you want to support this channel or Diabolic Shrimp or myself, click on that subscribe button. It's the red subscribe button down below. My books are also in the description. I donate a percentage of the money I make from any of my things, from books to advertising or whatever, to universally good causes, things like ocean exploration and childhood disease research. So I always appreciate when people connect with me and buy my things and support. But thank you so much for just watching and being a part of this. I really hope you get a chance to check out Blair's stuff. This has been another Diabolic Shrimp. Have a good night.